Yeah, I'm not as well educated as these other callers have been calling, but, a man said one time, a man is not an island to himself. And as a civilized civilization, we would, if you didn't have a government, you just have mob rule. The strongest guy with the biggest gun would be the leader, right? And so I spent 6 years in the military, tried to defend this government, or did what little bit I could. And I appreciate where we live. And I'm 71 years old now, and I draw Social Security, but I paid Social Security all the time that I worked for 50 years, And I don't feel it's really welfare that I'm drawing. If I didn't have this income, I've saved enough, I could probably live without it. But on the same token, if I had to go out and compete with people younger than me at this stage in my life to make a living, I don't think I could, really. I'd be down on the lower chain of the ladder there. See, so I think we need a little bit of government in our life, and if we didn't have it, we'd be living in caveman days. I'll get off here now.
Thank you, caller.
Well, I'd certainly take exception to the idea that if we didn't have government in its current form, we would have mob rule. I think everything we know about social organization argues against that. People have historically taken care of themselves in almost every respect without reliance on government. And in my view, they could take care of themselves in virtually every regard without reliance on government. They simply haven't had an opportunity to try doing so. But if you think that it's bad without government because the strong would brutalize the weak, just imagine what happens when you place enormous power in the hands of government officials. Then you can certainly expect brutalization and even mass murder eventually. One country after another has seen its government massacre its own citizens. In the 20th century, according to the compilations of Professor Rummel at Hawaii, governments killed more than 200 millions of their own citizens. This is not counting the number of people killed in wars these nations entered into, which killed tens of millions of additional persons. But governments killed hundreds of millions of their own citizens. And if that's the kind of protection that's keeping us from mob rule, I say, let's have mob rule. It's going to cause a lot fewer deaths before people decide that it doesn't make sense to run around in a mob. I think certainly your example of yourself being in trouble if the government were to remove its aid, or as you consider it, its payment that's due you, is certainly true. As I said a few minutes ago, people have come to rely on this government assistance. And if it were withdrawn suddenly, they would be in a great deal of trouble. But it wasn't necessary that they ever came to rely on it. There were alternatives. There were different ways for people to take care of themselves and to take care of others. And those other ways were voluntary and cooperative. But we need to remember that whenever we resort to government, we're resorting to the gun, because government backs up every action it takes from the time it collects its taxes to allow it to operate right on down the line of enforcing every one of its rules with the threat of violence. And all you have to do is continue to resist the government's dictation, and you'll soon enough find yourself exposed to violence, clapped in prison, or shot dead. So this is the alternative. This is the government's way. The government's way is the violent way. To my way of thinking, the private, cooperative way is so much more appealing that it makes no sense to turn to the violent way when we have an alternative available to us.